Okay. All right. Our evening is going to begin. I'm really happy that people have joined us tonight or today, wherever you're coming from. This webinar is part of a series that the Masa Leadership and Impact Center is sponsoring during the war to learn more about the Israel-Hamas conflict and war and tragedy from a variety of perspectives and contexts. My name is Dr. Amy Weinreb. I'm the head of the Masa Leadership and Impact Center, and I'm really happy to introduce our guests tonight. Very, very happy. This is retired Colonel Miri Eisin. She's a respected media commentator. She's the director of the Institute for Counter-Terrorism at Reichman University in Herzliya, and she's a longtime member and incoming chair of the Taub Center for Policy Studies as a board of directors. She is a media sensation. When we were talking a bit earlier, she was describing the number of networks that she's had to present on since the war began and the challenges that that presents. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that. And she has more than 20 years of experience in the intelligence community. I'm going to leave my introduction at that, but I'm also going to give you a little bit of a frame for how we're going to run the evening tonight. We ask our speakers to present just for about 20, maybe 25 minutes. During that time, I encourage you to write any questions that come up for you naturally or comments in the chat. At about the 20 to 25 minute mark, we'll wrap up Miri's presentation. And Andrew Didis, who is our community manager, is going to be running the Q&A. We will stop the formal Q&A section at exactly 10 o'clock Israeli time, so on the hour. But I leave the room open for another 20 minutes for informal chatting and sometimes things more related to Masa or more personal questions or concerns or ways that we can support you as a community. And then I close the Zoom at exactly 10:20. So that's what we have ahead of us. And I'm going to ask everybody to, for now, to mute your microphones. And also, I always ask Andrew to take a photo of us all together with our cameras on, because we like to document that we're spending time together across the globe talking about the war. And let's have cameras on right now. I'm not going to ask you to leave them on if you need to do other things with your evening. But once we have everybody at least on one screen with cameras on, thank you, thank you, thank you. Andrew will take a picture. And while Andrew's taking that picture, I also want to name the title of this talk. And the talks about the Israel-Hamas war, we're kind of having a scaffolding effect of learning a little bit more and more deeply, and sometimes from different perspectives. And this is an important one, what I would consider a key one, and it's called Paradigm Shifts, Middle East, Israel, and the Jewish World, meaning that after October 7th, we're not living in the same world in Israel or anywhere else. And Miri Eisin is going to explain that to us now. Please take it away.
Amy, thank you so much. And what an amazing amount of people. So first of all, you can turn your cameras off. It's okay. You can put me whichever way you want if I'm in, gallery view or speaker view. And I'm going to say up front what I'm going to try to talk about in my 20 minutes and what I'm not going to do. And I'm going to start with what I'm not going to do. After 34 days from October 7th, and we're here on the end of November 8th, and it was, as we know, with Halloween, 31 days in October. I am not going to show you a single visual, because I'm going to be talking in this paradigm change, and I'm going to be talking about that lovely word, paradigm. One of the things that we have all been inundated by and overwhelmed by and shocked by and don't know how to handle by is the visuals. So I'm doing 0 visuals, and I'm saying this as a choice. I teach at Reichman University. I teach at Tel Aviv University. I'm somebody who works a lot with presentations and with visuals. I like to engage with my audience. And tonight, I am not going to show any visuals, because one of the aspects of the paradigm change, and we'll talk in a moment about what that term means, has been the social media and deep media, in that sense, media manipulation, which is very visual, which has been happening over the last over a month. So good evening and Erev Tov and Shalom from Israel. And I still say Erev Tov, even though everybody's like, is it? And I'm like, yes. Okay, here we are. It's November 8th, and Hamas committed a new, innovative, not words that you usually hear about, new, innovative, mega genocidal terror attack. It was new. It was innovative in terror terms. And I'm going to talk a bit about the attack and the paradigm. When I say paradigm, by the way, it's the way that we look at the world. Meaning, in that sense, we all live our lives based on understandings that we have of the world. And both the intelligence community, but all of geopolitics, are based on that idea that we understand the world in a certain way and we act within it. And October 7th broke the Israeli paradigm, and it has immediate impact on the Middle Eastern one, and it's had a horrific impact that you're all living for the many, many places that you showed that you're here. Not all of us, each of us are living a different portion of it, but it also broke a paradigm in the Jewish world. And everything I'm saying from my Israeli, Middle Eastern-based perspective. One thing we didn't say in the introduction is that my native language is English, like Amy. My parents immigrated to Israel 52 years ago. I've lived here forever. Well, 52 years isn't forever. I have, certainly for the younger generation here, I have kids your age. All three of my kids serve in the military. I was exactly in the year where all three are in. Two were supposed to have gotten out in the last few weeks. They won't because of the war. So I have now three, a 24-year-old, 22-year-old, and 19-year-old, all serving in the military at the moment, as is my husband, who was also called up into the reserves. So what do I mean about paradigm changes? So element number one, okay, do we want to talk about terror? I'm very sarcastic. I always announce that because sometimes I say things in a very sarcastic way. There is such a thing called terrorism. When I say there is such a thing called terrorism, terrorism does not happen. A war does not happen. They are not passive. Both terror and wars are started by somebody, are planned by something. When you say a war kind of happened in that sense, these are evident that war, you can say there was a deterioration towards it, but a terror act is something that is long planned. And for the last 2 decades, from the Second Intifada, over 20 years ago, Israel, almost 4 years in a very bloody fight against Palestinians in the arena of both Judea and Samaria, West Bank, and in the Gaza Strip, and for that matter, in all of Israel. For the last 20 years, Israel's approach to terror organizations is to try and act as effectively as possible to preempt, meaning you want to find out about it before and arrest the terrorists. Those are terrorists that we have in jail. You can arrest them when they're planning it. You can arrest it before they do it. You can arrest them after they do it, but you really want to prevent. And that's one element. That's actions that you're taking all of the time. And the second portion of what you do in terrorism, and as in the introduction, I'm now the director of an Institute for Counter-Terrorism, is that you deter the terror organization. You deter them. You make them scared, that it's not worth their while, that for a variety of different reasons, they're deterred from acting in a way. And what happened on October 7th, 2023, is that Israelis, people like me who have been in this business for a long time, certainly the absolute failure that all of us understand, there's nothing good to say about October 7th. And that absolute failure is that we were not in any way deterring the terror organization Hamas from planning and executing immense atrocities against us. You need to understand that this is a paradigm change. I know you're all going, how did you not know? In the intelligence world, in the detection world, this is true about a lot of crimes. It's very hard to prevent and even preempt to stop before an action that you can't conceive will happen. Can you think about that for a moment? Think about it just for a moment, okay? I mean, what do I mean? It means that if I don't expect to see an elephant in Antarctica, I may go to Antarctica, the elephant will be there, and I can't see it because it shouldn't be there. Okay, that's like a very odd example in psychology. But when it comes to the terror world, one of the biggest challenges for anybody who's in counterterrorism is that, think about it right now, you have to think like a terrorist to be able to prevent the terrorist act. I don't think for a moment that Israel is naive, but on October 7th, 2023, we showed to a certain degree what I am going to call for myself, I say it about myself, not about other people, a naivete. I, as somebody who's been in this business for a very long time, could not think that people, I don't want to call them human beings, could plan the atrocities that were committed on October 7th. And if you can't think that they're going to do that, it's amazing how much that is going to stop you from not just deterring them from doing that because you don't think that they're going to do it, but certainly from understanding that that's what's about to happen and then preventing it. That's a huge change for us in Israel. Because what do I need to do right now? Every single time I'm going to be thinking about atrocities. Now, I want you to understand what this means right now, 2023, November 8th, still in Israel, as we go forward. In this Hamas genocidal terror attack that started a terror war, we all are aware that there is a second terror organization to the north of Israel inside Lebanon called Hezbollah. For years, we have followed and understood that Hezbollah has a plan that they have been training for. For years, we've talked about it. We've talked about the capabilities. We've shown how they're doing it. I'm going to describe it. It's going to sound familiar. Cross-border attack from the air, from the ground, perhaps from tunnels and from the sea, attacking simultaneously dozens of Israeli communities inside Israel, along the northern border, both the ones that are right along the border and ones a bit deeper. How do I know so much? Because Hezbollah has been presenting it for years. They've been practicing it. They've been showing it. At the same time that they are doing that cross-border attack, firing rockets, firing mortars, sending us all into safe rooms. Does all of this sound familiar? Because I've just given you the description in a different way of the October 7th attack. It's not that you're not aware of that attack, but having understood for years that Hezbollah is planning such a thing, nobody within any of the systems, even though we're dealing with terror organizations, understood the atrocities. And when I say the atrocities, I'm not going to go into the descriptions. I really feel after 34 days that all of us have heard, oh my God, we're all scarred for life about the atrocities. And it's not going to leave us because we still have the issue of the hostages that I'll talk about in a moment. But that's the first element that I need you to, as a changing paradigm, that when I look into the future, there's still that other terror organization in my immediate future that's on the other side of the border, and I've shifted my paradigm. I'm looking at it differently. So I'm asking you all as a question, not an exclamation mark. So should we be attacking Hezbollah? Don't we want to now preempt against Hezbollah? Now that we understand what Hamas planned, executed, and did, don't we want to stop that before? And I breathe in deep and I go, okay, this is a huge question on the table right now in the shifting paradigms. What Hezbollah planned that they did not do until now, we saw from Hamas, and in its own way, as I said before, terrorism can be new. Terrorism can be innovative, meaning that they take an idea, and why do they do so? Because they look at what is their target, Israel. They see what Israel does. Again, we have this tendency to look and say, what do they know? And in this case, it's certain that we underestimate it. But I want you to take it in that sense that when you learn that, there is a huge shift in paradigm. We learned that already on October 7th. I'm not telling you something that's happening today, a month later on November 8th, meaning all of the systems inside Israel, immediately after October 7th, during the initial attack, which had 3 different stages, and as it's going on, because we're still within that attack, we're still within the planned event that Hamas planned. And inside that event itself, the implications of Hamas winning, not yay, they put up a flag. That was me being sarcastic, okay? Winning in the sense that it's perceived that the kind of modus operandi, the kind of action that they planned can be successful for them has implications for every place on earth. This isn't about, oh, it's going to happen to you there, okay? Every place has its own uniqueness. But specifically here in the Middle East, Hamas is Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is a party, an organization, a charity that was established in Egypt over 100 years ago. And Hamas is the Palestine Muslim Brotherhood, and I'm using the terms that are very clear in that sense. Egypt in 2011, after they went through a revolution, arrested their president in 2011, went to relatively free elections in 2011, and Egypt, the country that we share a 195-kilometer border with, Egypt went to elections and quite freely elected 75% of its parliament Muslim Brotherhood, went to elections for a president, and the president that was elected at the end of 2011, beginning of 2012, was from the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. They had a wonderful relationship with Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Hamas took over the Gaza Strip in 2007. The Muslim Brotherhood run Egypt, ignored the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, not just Israel. They ignored them there, and they had a flourishing relationship with Hamas. In 2013, the Egyptian present president, who had been the Minister of Defense under that government, did a military coup. That's already 10 years ago. Was that good? Was that bad? I'm looking at it from an Israeli perspective. But right now, if a Muslim Brotherhood terror organization does a modus operandi of scorched ground, of kill everybody, of doing it as a terror army military attack, things that have happened inside Egypt over the last decade, the implications are for Egypt, who has Muslim Brotherhood. The implications are for Syria, that's been in a war for over a decade and has never recovered from it, and who knows where that would go. It has implications for Saudi Arabia. Can I keep on going down the list of the names on my map? I'll breathe in deep. Everybody here, okay? Erdogan, okay, the president of Turkey, remember I'm talking about the Middle East, the changing paradigm, overwhelmingly has supported Hamas all of the years as a Muslim Brotherhood group. But it's a terror organization. What does that do in Turkey? What does that do? I'm giving you all of these ripples of implications that when a terror organization is also in politics, and it's a terror organization, it's in politics, it immediately has ramifications for every single country in the arena. Number three, okay, number one is about the change of how we look at terror. Number two is the implications of Hamas as Muslim Brotherhood, as the one that was ruling over the Gaza Strip, that what they planned for a decade was to do a genocidal, murderous terror attack. And what does that mean in Egypt, Muslim Brotherhood, Turkey, Muslim Brotherhood, Saudi Arabia, etc.? Okay, those are two. Number three, media is a game changer. Now, this doesn't surprise any of you. I'm looking and I see different ages within the audience. Now I'm going to be rude. I'm being rude to myself. I'm allowed. I'm over 60. I can be as rude as I want, okay? I'm not on TikTok. What to do? I see some of my friends who go do little TikTok, well, used to, okay, TikTok videos, but over the last 3 years, as somebody who looks at terror organizations, not just here within our local arena. Hamas is a local terror organization, but as I said, that Muslim Brotherhood takes it a lot further than that. Not all Muslim Brotherhood are terror organizations. Again, that's part of that challenge there. But the media change that has happened over the last decade, and even more so with some of the different platforms that are extensively used by the different terror organizations. Okay, I'm like, look at that. I'm almost totally to be expected. Absolutely something that was planned. And here we are, 33, 34 days into what's going on right now. And the paradigm change is that when you plan a war and you plan the media plan When you plan a successful propaganda plan, it's propaganda, that's the term itself. When you plan that, it's so successful that right now there is the worst anti-Semitism in the world since World War II. That has to do not with element number one and not with element number two. It has to do with the media manipulation. Hamas planned and executed, and this is Hamas, and it's based on a whole world that afterwards someday I teach a full course on this at university, a full semester, because there's a lot to say about it. She says smilingly, because I get to teach lovely subjects about terrorism and how they recruit, etc. The Hamas media manipulation is the one thing in the event of 2023 that's not new. They do this every single time. But the impact this time, because of the lies, the denying, and the gap, are intense. You all know that we're in an echo box. You know that. You live in your echo box. When you hear the other echo box, you know that they're wrong because you're in your echo box. Very seldom do we hear the different ways that everything is described. So what's in that echo box that brought out the most horrific anti-Semitism, not anti-Israel, the worst anti-Semitism literally since the end of the Shoah, certainly since the establishment of the State of Israel. Hamas built a media manipulation plan. In it, on October 7th, what they uploaded in Arabic to those who support them, but it's something that was very broad, is a story of resistance, success, look at what we can do. And in the Middle Eastern, especially the Palestinian arena, but much broader than that, within that world, it did something. Look at me right now. I'm like, I can't believe I'm saying it in these terms. It gave them pride. Wow. Look at what we did. You need to understand that this sits on 25 years of delegitimizing Israel. It's hand in hand. Look at what we did to that illegitimate Israel. Look at how we managed to do what we did. Now you're all going, oh my God, they did atrocities. To be clear, they uploaded some of the atrocities, not all of them. They were all with GoPros. They all filmed everything they did. They were very proud of what they did because when they went on and out, as I said, anti-Semitism, what most of them were saying, Mom, I killed 10 Jews. They didn't say 10 Israelis. I killed 10 Jews. And it was posed in a framing of resistance. I'm proud. Look at how I am helping to free the homeland, to free Palestine. You're all going, really? On Saturday, October 7th, by the evening, most of the atrocious atrocities, I can't use other words. I don't want to describe them more right now. We all know what I'm talking about right now, and I'm not going to describe it more than that. But the atrocities that had been uploaded were erased. This was planned up front. This isn't oops. They upload, and from Saturday night, October 7th, that's a month and a bit ago, what is online as a the basis of everything is that they attacked military, and you go, really? They have a 9-month baby and an 87-year-old man, 230, they just adjusted the numbers again and again, 239 Israeli hostages and non-Israeli hostages. They've never said who's with them because it's a terror organization. It's a terror army. They don't let the hostages themselves are part of the event. I'm going back to what I was talking about with the media, because in the media manipulation, when I'm talking to, it's about victims. They deny that the Israeli victims are civilians. And so we now have to prove it. I need you to know that in psychology and in political psychology, and this is something that you all should be aware of, when you share, everybody breathe in deep because I'm going to say really harsh words, okay? When you share what is called pornography of violence, there's pornography of sex, there's pornography of violence. It's a term, okay? When you share it, people hate you because they viewed it because you shared it. They're appalled by what they see, but they're so disturbed. It's harsh. And in this media manipulation, the only way for us to prove is by sharing it, right? Who wants to share it? They keep showing. I mean, there's a whole psychological aspect also on the sharing of all of these. Oh my God, okay? But I need you to be aware, this is part of the media manipulation. This was planned up front. It's incredibly terrorizing because it's terror. It is horrific. There's an age gap, under 30, over 30, and you can see that age gap in the impact. Fourth element of the paradigm, because that's a paradigm change. We're not addressing it yet, and you're living it right now. Because it's brought out. The people who are coming out, I'm not for a moment excusing anybody. But the people who are in the other echo box, I know it's impossible for you to believe. They don't believe that October 7th happened the way we're describing. We have to prove it to them. That is Hamas's success. To me, it's like, and that's the one I say in the paradigm change that we have to address looking into the future. Number 4, okay, I did the changes in the terror, the issue of the modus operandi, media. Number 4, Iran. So here we are. So is it Iran? Isn't it Iran? Is that the most important part? Is it not the most important part? I'm saying it because for so many years when we've talked about what Iran, the Islamic regime of Iran, what it does against Israel, it calls for our destruction. But to be clear, Hamas calls for our destruction too. And they don't do it because of the Islamic regime in Iran. But what we have here in that sense is that meeting point where these different voices of Hamas, which is Palestinian, and Hezbollah, that's Lebanese, both of them supplied by Iran, but they come together on a common agenda. That is not new for Israel, but the implications right now are, to me, what's scaring the entire world. What the entire world is scared of is that this will bring World War III. Okay? That's what everybody's scared of. Now, I'm scared of World War III. I live in Israel. I have 250,000 people that I feel like I know almost all of them from the south and from the north, okay, who have been dislocated, relocated, refugees, because I want to protect them. How do I tell them to go back home up north to the border with Hezbollah? How do I tell them to go back south to a border if Hamas is there? And I give that because that to blame Iran is one thing. To initiate now an act against Hezbollah is a whole other thing. And if we enact it, or if Hezbollah starts it, then immediately it's all the Shiite proxies and it's Iran, and that affects every one of us. So all of the countries in the world want to contain it because then it's only Israel against the Palestinians. Do you understand how challenging that is for me? But on the other hand, do I want to expand it? Do I want to bring World War III? That's really scary. These are changing paradigms that did not exist before October 7th in the way that we're seeing them today. Last thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to shut up. In the world, pretty much for the last 20 years, there are 2 ways that most people in the world look at the world. What I'm going to say now is really, I don't know if it's clear or not clear, I hope so. I'll say otherwise. In Israel, when we look at the world, we tend to look at it as a collective, not as individuals. We tend to look at it as Israel and surrounded by Lebanon with Hezbollah, Syria, failed country, Jordan, the little engine that could, Egypt, who knows what's going to happen next. The Gaza Strip, look what that brought to us. Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, oh no. Add into that East Jerusalem. It's like we look at the world in a certain way. And when we tend to look at it in a collective way, we look through security eyes. When I look at it through security eyes, I'm asking questions. What are the threats? How do I defend myself? How do I survive? But it's in a collective way. That's security. It isn't right, wrong, better. It's a view and a lens. Most of the post-World War II world, which means that it includes Japan, okay, as something. It includes South Korea. North Korea is kind of weird in that sense. A lot of the Asian countries, again, post-World War II, post-colonialism, the end of the different big powers, let alone Greater Europe, North America, and large portions of Central and South America. Africa is a little bit different in that sense. Look at the world This isn't about good, bad, right, or wrong, everybody. Through humanitarian eyes. Now, we've heard a lot over the last few days and everything. Humanitarian. I'm talking about two different languages, two different approaches to the world. Humanitarian eyes means, and I'm using your names, I can't see you, don't worry about it. It means that Eldon and Cooper and Sergio, and Trisha and Alan and Barry, and Isaac and Aliza and Malka and Ethan and Orla. I'm just saying the names that I'm seeing on the screen in front of me, okay? Every single one of you, as an individual, have a right for your own freedom, your security, your human, okay, it's about the single human being and not the collective. And in wars, in this sense, it's like, it's about the victims on the one side, but it's two different languages. It's two different ways of looking at it. And we in Israel talk security. And when we hear people talk humanitarian, at the best, we think that they have good intentions. And at the worst, we just think that they're disconnected at 30,000 feet and they don't understand the world, right? And when you talk humanitarian to somebody who talks security, at the best, you think that they're kind of strict. And at the worst, you think that they're monsters. And I'm giving you those two different approaches right now because that shift in paradigm, and this is something that I'm trying to lead also right side in Israel, is that you can't live either in the one or in the other. Because we belong to a world that talks humanitarian, but we talk security. And we are alienating the world we belong in. And we don't understand that. It's two different languages. We think that, oh, no, we're going to persuade them and they'll understand that we're right. And it isn't about right and wrong. It's a different way of looking at the world. And I'm saying that right now because that's the biggest paradigm change, which I'm starting to, I don't know if it'll go further in that sense, but I'm involved in it at the moment in that sense. And this isn't about, let's, hug, kiss, and give the other cheek. Not at all. It's about how we view the world, how we view individuals, how we view those different aspects in an arena where war is seen as a negative. War is the worst thing there is. But within that, how do you address people inside the war? I talked a lot. I'm going to stop right now.
I think that's a really important and powerful way to end. And it's very clarifying for me, but I don't think it's necessarily easy at all. In fact, it might have just gotten harder if we're speaking two different languages and there's nobody to do the translation.
So it's true. What I've been doing in the last 33 days, and I mean, I've been on BBC, CNN, MSNBC. I specifically like to go more to the progressive audiences in that sense, because I know how to talk. I say it's a language, and it's not that I don't believe in it, but you need to be able to bring people who talk humanitarian into a different approach. Remember, you're all in echo boxes, okay? If you don't talk their language, you immediately alienate them. They won't listen to you at all. And that's true, by the way, usually on both sides.
So what happened while you were talking is I dominated the chat box with lots of questions, but not only. And I want to open this up to Q&A now. I think that if you haven't written in the chat box, go ahead and use the little yellow hand icon to raise your hand. And Andrew will navigate both the chat box and raised hands for the next a little bit under a half an hour now. Andrew, do you want to begin?
Sure. So one of the questions I'm seeing in the chat, what is the most difficult question asked in a major media interview? Is part of the paradigm shift the type of questions that are being asked?
That's a wonderful, wonderful question. So do you all have a sense of humor? Remember, one of the most important parts to be able to face anything is to keep your sense of humor, okay? Meaning that's one of the ways that we do so. And I'm saying that because when I went on BBC at 2 p.m. today, 2 p.m. Israel time, I was on at the top of the hour. They told me, more correctly, they said, please, what happens when you're going on TV is that you hear what's on right before you, because then they transition to you. Okay. But I do not see the images. because I'm looking like if I look into the camera right now, okay, I don't always have a split screen. It doesn't always show me what I'm saying. So BBC is, I'm listening, I can hear what they're saying, but I don't know what the visuals are that they're showing. So what's the hardest thing? The hardest thing is the questions that have to do with human life. How do you answer? How do you answer, okay? Without blaming a victim, how do you answer the question of why are so many children killed? And here I'll say specifically in this conflict in the Gaza Strip, it's a question that I've gotten over the years a lot. How can Israel kill children? And this isn't a debate club. I don't want to debate this with you all. I want you to think for a moment why that's a difficult question. I'm a mother. Dead children, that's the worst thing you can think of. It doesn't matter what their parents did or didn't do. They're kids. And it's the hardest question because my only answer can be that it's horrible when children are killed. So does that mean I just apologized? And I said that because I didn't. What I did is I gave certainly a type of sympathy. I don't even know if empathy, but I say that because those are the hardest questions. The second one that I'm finding the most difficult right now, in general, over the last 3 weeks, is the framing of a question that puts Israel and the Israeli Defense Forces on the same moral equivalency as Hamas terrorists. Now, there's oh so much you can do when you're answering live on TV. I can do a lot more when I do a lot of briefings and a lot of talks with different type of journalists before they go on. But when you're on live TV, you need to be aware that most people, when I'm talking to a camera, I don't know what they're feeding. If you're seeing me or if you're seeing dead bodies while I'm talking about the fact that it's the Hamas who's responsible. And they're showing bodies and saying, you know, it's like they're blaming Israel and they're going to, there's a question of how it's framed. So that's the challenge, which is always there. And to be clear to all of you, during a war, there are no good times. Wars are horrible. The pictures are horrible. People are dying. And yet you want to be consistent. You want to put things into where you want to go. So it's very challenging. But thank you. That's a great question. After this, Amy, I'm going to go get myself a much more better drink than just water, right? Okay.
Yes, you will deserve that for sure. Andrew, do you want to take the next question or choose the next question?
Sure. What do you think about the role of Russia and their personal interests in the Hamas attack in the context of the ongoing war in Ukraine? Do you think that after winning this war, Israel's officials should rethink the way we deal with both Russia and Ukraine?
Again, great questions. Geopolitics, okay? I talked more about the Middle Eastern arena and a bit about anti-Semitism just in the way that it came out. As I said, within that echo box, it's been so vehemently anti-Semitic. So I'm going to say the following things. Everybody breathe in deep. Why do I say that? Because Russia as a country, has been incredibly anti-Semitic. Incredibly. By the way, so is China. But China doesn't have a lot of Jews. And Russia still does. And I say that that the Russian anti-Semitism is very deep Christian anti-Semitism. It's not the modern, they're the ones who invented the protocols of the Elders of Zion. Do me a favor. That's Russian, guys. Okay. For those who don't know, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion is a fabricated book that was written at the end of the 19th century in Tsarist Russia. And you're going to recognize these ones because it's the basis of anti-Semitism nowadays. The Jews own the world. It's written like a reality show. And that's at the end of the 19th century. That the Jews own the world, that we're a cabal of people, that we own everything and we want to take over everything. It's just like, you can't, and that's the book, that's Russian. Now, I don't want to say, and all Russians are like that, okay? Having said that, 1 in 6 Israeli citizens right now, their native tongue is Russian. They could have come from the Ukraine, they could have come from all over Russia, but the mass immigration that came here at the end of the 1980s and overwhelmingly in the 1990s, and still trickles in. And after the Russia-Ukraine war, we have lots of Russian speakers. We are, for Russia, the biggest Russian-speaking diaspora. It's a very odd kind of thing. So what does Russia want? What does Putin want? Russia wants to, they want to be an empire. They want to be recognized as an empire. They want every single one of you to recognize that they are a significant player. Hey, they go over 12 time zones. They're an enormous country. They don't have that many people, but that many. They have a lot, but not that many. It's like 140 million, but that's what they want. And they know that Ukraine is part of Russia. You all don't understand. Ukraine has no right to, I mean, and I'm saying that because they attack Ukraine, the Crimea, they are an empire and acknowledge it as such. And their influence in the Middle East changed over the last 2 years with the Russia-Ukraine war, where when the world ostracized them, they went to Iran. And so here we are. Yes, Russia came out clearly. Putin came out clearly. I say on the side of Hamas, it's more nuanced than that, okay? It's horrible. That's what I said about the echo boxes. Because in the Hamas echo box, they never say Hamas. A, they say resistance, and B, they say Palestinian. So that the Russian can say, I'm coming out in honor of the Palestinian. This isn't about Hamas. So they absolutely came out on that side. They have been there for a while. Doesn't make anything easier. Remember what I said about World War III? That would just add into it. And just to add into the bad news that I have to tell you, China also came completely and absolutely out on the side of Hamas, on the side that says that Israel's reaction, okay, is disproportionate. I'm like, wow, we could talk about that one forever. So I don't know where Russia is going with this, but I do know that right now the world is dividing into those who support Hamas Palestinians, to those who have said, you know, we support Israel and we support Palestinian people. That's a distinction which is very important to say right now. And those that just outright have said Israel has the absolute right to do what it wants to do in response in that sense. This isn't about killing all the people. If we wanted to kill everybody in the Gaza Strip, could have done that already. Didn't need to do a ground operation, didn't need to get soldiers killed, could have just dropped a few bombs. But no, we didn't do that. So Russia, yeah, Russia's on the other side right now.
Thank you. Andrew, can you read Marissa's question there at the bottom about the Hamas charter?
Sure. What is your response when people try to use Hamas changing their charter in 2017 as an indication that they don't call for the death of all Jews?
It's a wonderful question. And here I would say that change of the charter in 2017, or the adaptation, and it came out in a lot of different ways. I'm not saying this in hindsight because it's hard to understand that. But my understanding now, in November 2023, is that Hamas did a series of steps over a very long time period to change reality and to change our understanding of what they're doing. A terror organization that goes into politics, if it leaves the terror, it's gone into politics. I may not like it. It may have been a terror organization before, but it goes into politics. And I'm going to say with that there are lots of Palestinian terror organizations that went into politics and pretty much left the terrorism behind. That, again, I'm not being cute about this because it's never easy. Hamas went into politics without ever leaving the terrorism behind. Hezbollah has gone into politics in Lebanon without ever leaving the terrorism behind. Au contraire, in my little bit of French, right? They use their terror capabilities to do their politics. So the change of the charter means nothing. They're a terror organization. What do I care about what they wrote? It's about what they have done in that sense, their capabilities, their planning, and the plan itself of the attack on October 7th is something that was very long-term. It started years ago. So, they changed their charter. And you know what? It impacted me, and me as a person, as an individual who looks at these things, and I thought, maybe Hamas is changing itself. And I forgot the basic thing that if they don't give up the terror capabilities, then they haven't changed the charter. Okay, all they've done is change words.
Andrew, would you like to pick another question? I see one. I know somebody had to leave. Olit Gruber had to leave, and she asked a very general question in a way from the United States about what people can do from New York. Will you read that one?
Sure. We have been sending donations to Filot Chizukim. What do you recommend as the number one priority that we do from New York to help Israel?
Wow, what a wonderful question. First of all, you're doing. You're sending, as you said, you're doing. So my answer to that is whatever you do is good. And I don't mean this as to say it little. Every single person has to do what they feel comfortable with. If it's having a conversation with somebody, if it's going to some kind of a demonstration, if it's speaking out, if it's not speaking publicly but behind the scenes, how can you help here when it comes to Israel? Reach out, every single one of you. We feel very isolated, not isolated, that's not the correct word. We feel that, oh my God, all of this happened to us and we're the ones being blamed. We need to know that there are other voices out there. We need to know that you're not, because as I said, that the outbreak of anti-Semitism that's happened, the worst for me is the United States, because it's just unheard of in the way that it's happening. And you have to withstand that. So it's called breathing in deep, staying strong. Not, it's like, I don't want you to go out and now be the ones, I don't want something to happen to you. I want you to be proud of who we are and to ask questions. And in the support to Israel, just write people that you know and say, hi, thought about you. Don't expect an answer. We're in a very different world here, but we love the attention and expect an emoji back. But to me, that's the most important part, is that we don't feel, because I literally, for the first time in my life, 52 years in Israel, and I thought to myself, I really don't want to go anywhere in the world right now. And I need to know that there are people and places in the world that still see me. And that paradigm that I talked about in that sense before, it's the security humanitarian. As I said, it's a very challenging one, doesn't deny my being part of that world.
Andrew, I see a question we should address from Sergi at the end.
Sure. Should we expect that when Israel is done with Hamas, Israel and the US will attempt to address the issue of the nuclear program militarily? Should we anticipate a war with Iran soon?
Wow. Sergey, my heart goes out to all of us right now. So haven't we been talking about, that war with Iran for years and years and years and years and years? That's part of the whole idea of one of the challenges that we face right now. And again, Iran is a sovereign country. It has a governance, authoritative. It's not a dictatorship, but that doesn't matter. It is a religious authority that runs the country. And it doesn't matter if people have different opinions, different things there. That religious authority has run that country for dozens of years at this stage. I mean, pretty much from 1979. Why am I saying that? Because the question that comes out, this is kind of about the paradigm shift that I'm asking as a question now. I don't have an answer. My assumption until October 7th was that Hamas was rational. Remember what I said at the beginning? That I couldn't think that they could plan such atrocities? And most of our assumptions about Iran for many, many years has been, we don't know what their rationale is. So I'm glad to say up front that we questioned that about Iran for many years. Meaning, would they try to annihilate us? Maybe not be a rational thing to do, right? But maybe their rationale is one that annihilates us. And that's what happened with Hamas. They did a genocidal terror attack. And so I don't think that we're about to be at war with Iran. And the reason I don't think we're about to be at war with Iran is because on this issue, both Israel and the United States, both Israel, the United States, and the EU, both Israel, the United States, the EU, and Great Britain, I'm saying just as a group, view the threat as one that isn't only against Israel. And I say that because this shouldn't be, if it's everybody is against Israel and the problem is Israel, here I am at the end in anti-Semitism. What, really? We're all the problems in the world? So let's cease to exist. That's exactly what Iran says. That's exactly what Hamas says. So in this case, when it comes to that, there's an understanding that Iran, trying to export its Islamic version of their revolution, and it's not the same as what Hamas wants. That their ideologies meet when it comes to the annihilation of the state of Israel. But the Sunni vision, the Shiite vision are not exactly the same. Hezbollah is Shiite, Hamas is Sunni. I don't know if everything I said right now is actually terms that you're aware of. For those who want different time, we could talk and expand on them. But I do think that right now, Israel is very aware of the challenge of Iran. But in this case, I'm going to say, the United States of America has not talked. It has taken action. There are more U.S. capabilities, and this isn't about protecting Israel. This is about the threat that Iran is to everybody. You understand that difference there? Because when it becomes that the United States is sending it to protect Israel, then it becomes again that focus. But if Israel wasn't there, it'd be a lot easier for everybody. There wouldn't be that World War III. But Iran poses a challenge to every single country in the Middle East. And that's something that is understood, that it's not just in the Middle East, it's broader. Go read up while we were sitting here in the last 2 hours. The Israeli Mossad and Shabak, but it's mainly the Mossad, put out a briefing that in Brazil, they just arrested a Hezbollah terror unit that was planning a terror attack in Brazil. And it has both the Iranian Islamic regime and Hezbollah connection. And that's in Brazil. So as I said, this is something that goes way beyond the immediate Middle East. And of course, you're going to have those who are going to say, if Israel would just establish Palestine, then Hezbollah wouldn't attack in Brazil. And I'm like, really? Okay. As I said, security, humanitarian. I'm very aware of the challenges of how that cycle goes around. Me being cynical again. Thank you.
Andrew, do you want to select one last question? There's some really good ones that are popping up at the end.
Sure. What does Gaza look like the day Hamas is eliminated? Who will rule?
Is that Eleanor? Eleanor, thank you for the question. Eleanor, I'm going to share with you the following thing. I just started during the war to be the director of an institute, which is called the Institute for Counter-Terrorism at Reichman University, an amazing institute that's been there for 28 years. And we, an hour before my session with you, are putting together now a think team, brainstorming to say, what does the Gaza Strip look like the day after Hamas is eliminated? Meaning, I can give you now the 5 scenarios that we're going to look at. And I'm giving you to give you an idea, because we're at that stage of brainstorming. We didn't know that we had to think at this on October 7th, and it has to do with other aspects. So, will Israel just leave? That's a scenario. We're in there now. We're destroying Hamas, and we leave. That sounds pretty harsh, doesn't it? Oh, so scenario number 2 is that Israel will stay. Doesn't that sound great to everybody? Not. That was me being sarcastic, but that's a scenario. Scenario number 3 is that Palestinians take over, not Hamas. The terminology is the Palestinian Authority from the West Bank. That is so not an easy thing to happen. So everybody goes, oh, so Israel leaves, that's bad. Israel stays, that's bad. Palestinian Authority, that's bad. So how about an international force? So before, when you were writing where you're from, do you know of any country in the world that would want to send its troops into the Gaza Strip? Any. Give me one. Give me one country that as a country has sent troops to fight with Ukraine against Russia. Okay? I'm just giving you. So you go, okay, so maybe international troops, no. Another scenario is that it's Arab local troops. Okay? Why would they want to go into the Gaza Strip? I just gave you the options because there are no Hollywood, Disney happily ever afters. That's what it's going to look like. Okay, I want to be clear. And it's very challenging for everybody because at the end, you want to take an option that's realistic, that works, that it's within the Israeli interests. But when you say the Israeli interests, remember we were just talking about the Israeli, the arena, the Middle East, all these different changes. So yes, those are the 5 options that we're going to be looking at, Eleanor. I have no idea where we're going to go with it. We're talking about it next week. I have an amazing institute that has amazing people as part of as the fellows. It's all of the people that used to be in the system, but now they're has-beens, but they have lots of time and they can sit and talk about it. And I hope that within a week, we're going to come out with, again, this isn't about happily ever after, but at least with the understanding of the pros and cons of the different ones, because the Gaza Strip is still going to be there. 2 million people are still going to be there. Something has to happen. Okay.
Do you have a favorite of those 5 options, a secret favorite?
No, I'm at the stage where I'm really trying to keep an open mind, and I'm even doing it with people who are very, very different, who have different ideas, because we're all inside. It's as if we always are looking for, like, what's the good option? There are no good options. And yet, if you don't choose one of the bad options, maybe some of the bad options have. So what we're trying to do is just to put together and to understand the implications, both on Israel domestically, on Israel within our arena, on Israel within the world. And we go back to that security humanitarian. The world, or the media world, is very much against us. All these come into play. So no,
this is a related question here at the bottom that I'm just, and this will be our final question, I think. I don't want to end on a note of despair, but I think we're ending on a note of actually thinking about the next stages, that there is a collective imagination and a reality that this war will be over and that Gaza will have a new future. But Gabriel Abrahams asks, UNRWA are part of the problem. Is there a way to keep them away from Gaza?
So it's a question that's come up so much. People are always like, it's UNRWA. And I'm always like, to me, UNRWA is the symptom, not necessarily the problem. How about thinking outside the box? UNRWA is there. UNRWA is the strongest thing there. Totally change UNRWA because it's already there. Nobody wants to come in, but UNRWA is already there. And in that sense, every time I say that, everybody's like, but UNRWA is bad. I'm like, you're right. But all of the options are bad. They're at least there. Nobody else wants to come in. And I pose it as a question because all of the options are bad. Maybe that will be, like the United Nations are so involved in any case, let them be the ones responsible. Not as UNRWA in that sense, but that UNRWA is there already and change it into a different mandate. Again, I'm thinking outside the box. I have no idea where I'm going to go with that thought, because we all have such a collective disdain and we detest UNRWA. But I, at the end of the day, also say that at the end, UNRWA are the ones that have, to be clear to everybody, okay, the Gaza Strip is a tragedy. And they are victims. And they take Hamas as that gives them pride. No, that's where I am. That's where I am. Amazing Masa people. I'm going to head off.
Yes, you head off. Thank you so much for this.
Absolutely.
I think that it has been, I think the paradigm shift that you have introduced and thinking about security versus humanitarianism is really rather mind-blowing. I think I'm going to enter conversations with a new sense of strength, not that I can necessarily break through that barrier, but sometimes naming it and beginning to tame it is a first step. So thank you. Go get your hard drink. I'm sure we'll see you again. And I'm sticking around for anybody who wants to continue the conversation informally.
Laila Tov, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Everyone, I just wanted to let you know something about the recording. I'm going to share the link to our Masa emergency group chat, and I'll make the recording available to everyone there.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yes. So I'm sharing it now in the group chat. Okay. Feel free to join.
Yeah. People are thanking you for making the recording available. I think we'll probably at some point have a library of all the recordings with the names of the lectures, and people can go through them at their own pace, because there's certainly a lot of information to take in at one time. Okay. For those of you who are still here, and really feel free to move on with your day or with your evening, I am not Miri Eisin. I do not have a military strategic background, and I do not speak regularly on major international news broadcasting platforms. But I am happy to hear questions that you have, or things that stuck with you, or even shift gears. And if you're part of the Masa ecosystem, to talk a little bit about where you are in relation to us, or any thoughts or feelings about Israel or the war, feel free to raise your hand at this point. I think that will be easier than keeping track of the chat. And I think we should stop the recording now too, so we can have